Hello, class, and welcome to our next lecture for Minds, Brains, and Machines. For today, we read Williams' paper on the self and the future. A really fun paper that flips a lot of intuitions on their head. So let's get into it. So Williams is going to talk about body swap cases where one person's brain goes in another person's body and their brain goes in the original body, which at first glance seem to give us good reason to think that personal identity tracks the mind. Where your brain goes and where your mind is seems to be where the self is. At least that's what the intuition looks like. And remember, what we're looking for when it comes to personal identity through time is a kind of numerical identity. What is the person that remains exactly the same and that persists through time, from time 1 to time 2. After 5 minutes, an hour, a year ago, 5 years ago, what makes you the same you that you were? So Williams is going to begin with the body swap case and see what it gives us when we tell the story in this particular way. So as the story goes, there's a person A and a person B, and each has their own body. Each agrees to undergo an operation where their brains will be swapped between those bodies. And it turns out that the operation is a success. The B-bodied person now has A's memory, but because they have A's brain, and the A-bodied person has B's memories because B's brain has now been put in A's body. So what do we think? Does person A now exist in B's body and vice versa? Well, it seems so. Our intuition at least would tell us so, because the B-bodied person with A's brain has A's memories. They remember what A had for breakfast yesterday, and likewise the A-bodied person has B's memories. They remember what B had for breakfast yesterday morning. And so it appears that the mind and the self do track with identity as you swap between bodies. So identity, in this case, seems to follow the mind with the memories that it comes with. So we can give the case another way that still seems to strengthen the intuition that the mind is the home of the identity. So it's the same case as before. It's a body swap. A and B are going to have their brains put in dollars, and the other participant will be tortured. So before the surgery happens, A and B, before the surgery, before the brain swap, they're both asked, whose body would you like to be tortured and whose body would you like to receive $100,000? And of course, the A-bodied person says, look, I don't want to be tortured after the operation, so I'm going to say that this original body that I'm in right now should get tortured, and where my mind is, after I have the brain swap, that body should receive $100,000 because I want to be able to spend $100,000. And B, of course, chooses the opposite. They don't want to be tortured either. They want to make $100,000. So here what we see is a transfer of desire. It's not just of memory, but of future-oriented desire. When we put stakes up, we invest in where our mind is going to end up. We want our investment to pay out in the future, and that payout should go to where the mind is, not where the body is. We put the $100,000 where the brain goes, not where the body remains. So summing up so far, the case of swapping memories and the case of swapping desires both look like good evidence for whatever is mental, or the brain in this case, counting as who the self is and what the person is. And that's what makes us persist through time. So if our memories persist and or our desires persist, where they persist, so these cases make it seem, is what count as the self. And the body appears to be inconsequential to the numerical self-identity that persists through time. So here's where Williams starts to get creative. Williams is going to turn these body swap cases that seem to give us really good intuitive evidence that the mind and the brain go together, and he's going to give us reason to think that the body matters for personal identity. So he gives us an example. He says, you are approached by some mad scientist who walks up to you and says, hey, tomorrow you're going to be tortured. What do you feel? Probably afraid and apprehensive of tomorrow. You don't want to be tortured, so you're not looking forward to that. You're a little worried. And then the mad scientist says, but don't worry, you have nothing to worry about. When the time comes for you to be tortured, you won't remember this moment right now, and you won't remember that I told you. Are you still afraid? Well, yeah, because even if you had some kind of amnesia or forgot, you'd still be concerned for what's going to happen. You don't want that to happen still. There's a further detail. The mad scientist says, in fact, even after the torture, you won't remember any of the things that you remember now. You won't just not remember me telling you this about tomorrow, but you'll also not remember all of your past history. You'll have no memory whatsoever. Are you still afraid? Well, yeah, probably. You're apprehensive for a lot of reasons now. You don't want to be tortured and you don't want to lose all your memories. And in fact, when you wake up, says the mad scientist, you'll have a whole new set of memories. Does this make you feel better about the torture? Well, no. Having new memories or having forgotten your old memories still doesn't alleviate the fact of discomfort when it comes to what's going to happen to your body. And then the mad scientist says, when you wake up from your torture, you'll have new memories and the character or impressions of some already or other person that exists. Does this alleviate your apprehension, concern, or fear? Probably not. You're probably still concerned. But what Williams has done for us in telling us the story of the mad scientist is he's constructed a body swap case, but he's told it from a first personal perspective. He's flipped the case on its head. By changing the narrative, he changes the intuition that gets pumped or that is inspired by the examples. So let's break it down piece by piece. So there's tomorrow's torture. You're afraid. You don't want that to happen. And then you have no memory of being told about it, and the torture will still be uncomfortable even if you don't recall being told, and so you're still worried about it. You don't want it to happen. Now, you might also not have any memory of the things that you remember now, but you can imagine yourself with amnesia and still not want that person, the amnesiac version of yourself, to be hurt. Likewise, you can be given new memories, but you might think yourself able to go mad, right? You can lose your mind and think that you're George V. And you don't want in the future that you do go mad, that person to be tortured either. That's not good. You're apprehensive about it if you're told that's going to happen. But then you're told that you might have some other existing person's memory. And the fear or apprehension for the future torture still seems reasonable. Because in this case, as Williams says, it's immaterial whether you think in your madness that you're George V or that you're some person that actually exists, right? Who you think you are in your state of madness doesn't make a difference to the fact that now, looking forward to the possibility of that madness, of our thinking that we're someone else, that we're still going to be hurt and that we don't want that to happen. As we project ourselves into the future and our conception of ourselves into the future, we want to protect and care for despite the conditions of mind that the body's in. We want to care for that body. And that's what the fear and apprehension is about. So Bernard Williams takes the classic case of the body swap, which does seem to decisively show that personal identity persists alongside the mind, and he flips the case on its head by retelling the story. By retelling the very same story from a different perspective, not from the case of swapping brains, but rather from a first personal perspective where everything that happens to you with memory loss and with the torture. He retells that same story and it seems to undermine this intuition. All of a sudden, we think, maybe I'm not quite so easy about myself moving on with the next body. Maybe I still think some part of my identity continues on in that body, which is why I'm apprehensive of its being hurt. I don't want that to happen because that's a part of me. Maybe the body does matter for our personal identity to persist through time, or so Williams wants us to at least think that that's possible, right? So are you convinced? I think this is an open question. Williams doesn't quite give us a positive account, that is to say, an argument for the idea that the body is a part of our personal identity. But what Williams does do is give us good reason to think that we shouldn't write it off so easily. That body swap cases and the strength of the intuition that the self is somewhere here in the head and in the mind and in the brain is a strong intuition, but not a complete one. We also need to care about the body as pertaining to a part of our identity that persists through time.